I'm joined today by Ben and Erin Napier, who are the kindest, coolest people I know. They are the stars of the HGTV's Hometown, where they restore homes in Laurel, Mississippi. Mississippi, by the way, is the Manitoba of America, so therefore we are kindred spirits. They own and operate Laurel Mercantile Company, where they design and manufacture gorgeous heirloom goods, and they wrote a book I love. It's called Make Something Good Today. Basically, there is nothing they can't do. They're funny and kind. It's really terrible. Please hate them. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Hey, guys.
We're excited. You're a really big deal. Like,
yes, Ben. Thank you.
I'm serious. Like, we have so many friends when we were talking about doing this, and they were like, "Oh my gosh,
Thanks so much!"
Yay! Well, this is my time to be crazy nosy about your lives. Let's start with you, Ben. I imagine this is exactly what you pictured for your life. That you would have a television show.
Yes. So, Methodist preacher's kid from South Mississippi, with a Duke alum as a father and an Emory Candler alum as a mother.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of ministry.
Yeah, it is. Yes. I'm steeped in it. And this, which is maybe why I'm not one. But no, I did youth ministry for 10 years and honestly thought I was going to go into politics because I was going to make a difference. And that didn't work out. And the producer who discovered us told me, she's like, "I'm so glad you lost that election because we couldn't do this."
You ran for city council in Laurel.
Oh, I see.
Big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal.
Big Ben means business.
Yeah.
Was that your slogan?
Yes,
it was. And then the election was on June 4th. And June 4th was Independence Day.
He ran as an independent. You see, it had an apostrophe S.
It was
Not everybody got it.
A little too deep for a lot of people. English is hard.
I want this so much for you. What did you like initially about politics that made you think you're a
I think he
person?
thought he could make it an honest thing.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
No, it was I don't know. I just liked the idea of being able to influence, and make changes based on.
You're good at making relationships, and your goal was to get more business in downtown Laurel. That was his whole platform.
Yeah, Laurel was a big industrial town for years, and that is still sort of the case. It's still an industrial town. I mean, we still have some huge industry here. But my idea was to encourage and bring it because our ward was the central business district, downtown footprint. And so I wanted to bring in more small businesses there. And now we've done it without me being in office.
Which is much, much better.
That is. When you were little, did you think politics is for me, or did you have a different plan?
He's supposed to be playing Duke basketball.
No, that would have been
that
4
was
years.
Or that
3
was
years.
4 years of his life, but then you'd probably just become a coach and just stay there.
Well, I'd have probably gone pro, and by now I would be coaching somewhere.
Yeah.
Or be a commentator. No, my grandfather was a politician. He was always involved in politics, and he was a sheriff for a while. But then he started helping behind the scenes, which was an elected office, sheriff's elected office. Yeah. But then he was heavily involved in state and local politics our entire life.
Wow! And
so me and my brothers would go to like these big political rallies and get-togethers, and it was just it was very exciting. And also, I mean, I grew up as a preacher's kid, so I grew up in politics.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the plan. And Erin was going to be a magazine.
I don't know anything about newspapers. I was going to be a magazine designer.
Okay, Erin, take me back to the earliest. You're like in elementary school collaging about your dreams.
It started that far back.
I literally had an accordion folder.
Oh.
And I would clip pages I loved out of magazines, which incidentally were only home magazines. My mom had Southern Living and Coastal Living and Cottage Living, and I had accordion folders of paint colors I liked and magazine layouts I liked, and that's what I was into, was design and pretty houses.
And here we are.
So I guess indirectly this was the plan, but I got a degree in art. So
oh wow.
I use it.
Yes,
you do use it.
I do use it.
Absolutely, you do.
Wow. That's
The best thing about Erin's art degree is how worried her parents were for that.
Totally. Every parent is like, when my little girl grows up, I just want to make sure that it's a 4-year BA or a 2-year program in something. I feel confused about the output.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was in 2nd grade, we found out that I was basically blind when I went to the eye doctor for the first time. And it was like, whoa, trees have individual leaves on them. And I left. And I was so excited to be able to see. And I was like, I want to be an eye doctor because it's not scary. It doesn't hurt. And it was super fun to be able to see. My dad clung to that.
I mean, we were
the rest of my life.
Junior year of college. And he
finally, in the last 3 years, probably stopped saying, are you still thinking about going to ophthalmology school?
One of my favorite things about you guys is how rooted you are in a particular place, and that for the two of you, it's Laurel. Mm-hmm. Erin, I wondered if you could, this is where you're from, right?
It is. Yep.
I wondered if you could tell me a bit about Laurel. I don't even know if I've ever been to Mississippi. So give me the lay of the land.
We have deep roots in arts and music, first of all. And I think that it happened because it's also a very poor state. It still is. It always has been. And I think that because people didn't have a lot of financial means, when they wanted things or needed things, they found ways to make them, and they found ways to do it beautifully. And it's food, music, art. We just have a really rich history.
Yeah.
In art that most people don't think of. That's not the first thing you think of when you think of Mississippi, but we are Elvis and B.B. King and Eudora Welty and
Faulkner.
William Faulkner. So we know how to do art here.
So when Erin talks about Mississippi being poor, it permeates everything. And but you did have, you hear about, like in the Mississippi Delta, for instance, you have landowners and then you have everyone else. And there's this very small group of people who did have, and then nobody else had anything. And so, people talk about the Great Depression. It didn't hit Mississippi because we had been in it. You have everybody lived the same life and lived it together and looked after each other. And there are terrible stories that happened, and just like there are anywhere else. And, but, for our parents growing up, they talk about, they didn't know any better. They didn't know any different. And Erin's mom tells stories, stereotypes exist for a reason. And Erin's mom talks about she would get a new pair of shoes for school. And by the end of school, by the summertime, those shoes were done, and she just went barefoot all summer. And my dad tells the same story, and my mom. And and then also for the rest of the world, we feel like Mississippi is the Delta. Like when people talk about Mississippi,
they think of the Delta as what they see in their mind's eye. But we're in the Pine Belt. It's a very different culture.
My parents lived in what's called the Hills, which is very comparable to the Durham area. And it's hilly, and it's not very agriculturally rich because of the hills, but where we live, it's a timber and industrial area and chicken farms.
Yes.
And then there's the coast and the Delta. So
and we've given you way more than you wanted to know about Mississippi.
So into that. I love the description because it does remind me of Manitoba is one of the provinces that it's historically not as rich as other provinces. And it also has a lot of small communities that never really expected to be in the center of things. And then because of that, there's incredible maker cultures. I mean, I'm from a Mennonite background where they do a lot in almost make furniture all the time. And then all their artistic side comes out where they there's so much quilting and embroidering and building and looking at something and then wanting to repurpose it into something else. And out of that, I think has come a lot of cultural richness that I really admire.
Absolutely. And pride in that. Because it comes, it's born out of necessity. You can't afford to go and buy things. And so you make things, which is how I got my start in woodworking
we couldn't afford the furniture that I wanted.
And so I learned how to do woodworking. And I had started it in college and just became fascinated and enamored with it. And then when we got married and we didn't have any money and we needed furniture until I built it. But yeah, that's the thing, is the poverty creates this maker's economy.
Experience of wanting to be home, have a place that feels like home. For people who aren't familiar with the premise of your show, it touches such a deep need and connection about how we might like feel like we belong to somewhere. So tell me about your show and that sort of need that it touches.
Everyone is from somewhere. This is something we discovered when the first person that ever spoke to us in public and said, "I love your show." We were in New York City, and it was a guy.
Well, the first one that was shocking.
Yeah, he was in a Yankees hat. He was covered in tattoos, and he punched Ben in the shoulder and said, "Hey, man, I love your show."
And it was like this moment of, we're in a sea of people. We're on Fifth Avenue walking. It was Christmas time. We were looking, so it's like wads of people meeting. And this guy picked us out of the crowd. He was going one way, we were going the other. And he stiff arms me into the shoulder because I turned in this like fight or flight.
He was
moment.
ready to like bow up.
Totally.
What is going on here? Are we fixing to brawl in Fifth Avenue, New York? And so I turned, and he was this really nice guy, and also like talk about stereotypes. Like, I'm preacher's kid from Mississippi, and this guy's covered in tattoos, and he's wearing a flat brim Yankees hat, and he's got dark rim glasses. Obviously a ruffian.
Ready to start something.
He was cruising for a bruising, and he's, he loves the show. And we were talking to a producer about it, and she's, this Jewish New Yorker who born and raised in New York. And she said, well, everybody's from somewhere.
And we all want to see it do well.
Yeah, nobody wants to say like, oh, I'm from this place.
And it's awful.
Blah, blah. And so Erin's from here. I'm a Methodist preacher's kid, so I lived in a bunch of small towns and wasn't really from anywhere, but wanted to be from somewhere. And so, we put down roots.
I'm deeply, deeply rooted. It's a miracle I went 4 hours away from my mama to go to college. But I only did it for 2 years. I did junior college for 2 years before that, so I could stay close. But yeah, and now my parents live 2 or 3 miles from us, and we see them almost every day. But that's really what we realized is when we were in college, we're like, we'll live in Birmingham, and I can work for a magazine, and you can get a law degree, and we're gonna. And it's
change the world.
I don't know. We just thought we needed to be somewhere else to have a great career that we loved. And the truth is that the like American dream was waiting for us at home, where we could literally buy the house of our dreams for $145,000. And then we fixed it up the way we wanted it. And we documented it in my little online journal. I guess it's a blog, but I don't know. It was just a daily journal where I wrote about the best thing that happened every day. And so someone saw that and reached out about us doing a show. It was not our plan. It was not expected. And I don't know. It's the weirdest thing in the world. And it is, if you're going to ask us this question at some point, where do you see yourselves in the next 5 or 10 years? People like to ask us that. And I don't make plans anymore because every plan we ever made fell apart. And what happened was a lot better than that. So,
which is, that's not the way you're raised. My parents, it's funny because that's the way my parents lived. My parents were Erin's dad got a degree, started the rehab department at the hospital, did that for
44
years, and then retired and enjoyed it. My parents, like my dad has done everything. My mom has done everything. They, raised 4 boys, and it's very, if prompted. For the record, just in case anybody wants to, we can. It has been said, I don't know that anyone's ever witnessed it other than my mother, but it's happened. But that's the way they lived, was very like, loosey-goosey, and, plans aren't going to work out, so don't make them. But then they wanted me and my brothers, like, you get a degree, have a plan, have a fallback plan, and work hard, and then retire. And none of my brothers, except for the oldest, has done anything like that. So, it worked. And like Erin said, we quit making plans because none of our plans have worked at all.
Ever. Not one time.
Failed miserably at them.
I hear that. I think there's a lot of people who have a real desire for home, but maybe, when they do those like studies of how people's associations work, and they talk about like primary ties, and then they have like, then they talk about weak ties, like the person you get your coffee from, or I don't know, the person you regularly see at the bank, and that people's lives are really enriched by having all of these weak ties. But that I think a lot of people noticed since the pandemic, really.
Third
places.
Yes, exactly right. Third places. Yeah. And that we're not very practiced in having places that make us feel connected. Yeah. I know community is very difficult to do in practice, and you guys are very practiced at creating community. I wonder what advice you have for people who want to be more connected, but are one of those many people who like moved one too many times, are a little bit too far away, have one of those jobs that just like keep pushing you past.
This is a thing that we talk about a lot.
I can't speak on this from I grew up here, so I've known every person in this town my whole life.
But it takes everyone. This is a thing that we talk about. Like, community takes everyone. And that sounds very like, oh yeah, it takes a village, but what I mean is like everyone has a part to play, and it may be such a small part that you don't even feel like you're playing a part, but you are. And, and then also it takes, the leaders letting other people take part in it. And that's a thing that we see a lot when we go to other towns is, there's somebody who is working so hard and they're doing so much. And it's like, you're kind of being a dictator here. You're not letting anybody else participate, and you're trying to make it this thing that you want, and it's never going to be that. And when we first moved to Laurel, everyone was, the goal, they were trying to make it
more like Hattiesburg
or Oxford or
those are college towns, but Laurel isn't.
Yeah, Laurel's never going to be that. And that's a thing that, like, we tell people all the time, if you're young and single, Laurel is not for you. And I'm sorry.
This is old people and young family town.
Rather, I should say, if you're young and single and you're looking for the Mr. or Mrs. Right, and
it's going to be tough. We're importing, though. Yeah. We are definitely importing. We know some amazing single ladies who
we know so many.
We want them to meet ladies. Good guys and bring them here.
Yeah.
But don't leave.
So what I hear you saying is a strong message for all attractive accomplished men.
We need some single men in Laurel. That'd be great. If you're listening.
Who can fight if prompted. Who for the record can fight if prompted.
Community, finding a church family. Those are some great initial weak ties that become very strong primary ties.
It has been noted.
Finding finding organizations like we have Laurel Main Street, and it was a small thing when it began in 2008. And now it's so huge with so many committees, but those committees become friend groups, and those friend groups are the ones who make all the great events happen in Laurel. And
I mean, you've got like chambers of commerce, and you have economic development authorities. You have all these groups, and I think it's different. Like when our parents were young, or when our grandparents were young, you had like Kiwanis and
oh my gosh, Ben, Masons. I get so whipped up about this topic. I won't stop explaining to people how they should join the Rotary Club.
The Rotary Club.
Not so sexy to tell people to join voluntary associations, but I really believe that.
It is a huge part of what has kept Laurel alive and what has made it great.
But the thing is, there were a lot, I think, then fewer responsibilities. I don't know what has happened, but we all overcommit ourselves. And maybe that's why these volunteer societies are not, they're not growing. Mm-hmm. But I think we're all overcommitted. The people our age certainly are.
So we're overcommitted, but we need to commit more.
We do. We need to reprioritize our commitments.
Yeah, we do need to and that's another thing is like, like I can remember, the old men in our churches, oh, I got Rotary this week, or I got Kiwanis, and they were in everything.
Yeah.
And maybe it was because they didn't want to be at home. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know that whole dynamic. But Erin and I work crazy hours, but our family dynamic is that we will be home by 5 no matter what. We will be home on the weekend no matter what. And so we're in a season of life where we don't volunteer as much. And so we are constantly trying to reflect, and because we're from a very small town, and there is a very big spotlight on what we do, and so we're constantly trying to reflect that back on our town, because you have great people here who they are the ones making this town great. We're just the ones who are magnifying what they're doing, and so I think get involved in something.
Yeah, and I hear you saying too, that when you want to become more involved, that so much of it is figuring out which season you're in. Are you in a season where you have a little bit more to give and give it? Erin, I love it when you say bloom where you're planted, because blooming assumes like flourishing. So I wonder, what does it mean for you to bloom in the season in which you're planted right now?
Right now, I'm just pouring everything I have into Helen and May. And that it takes an enormous amount of energy and effort to make your kids feel like you're engaged with them when you have these are constantly trying to pull us away from the only thing that matters, which is playing Barbies maybe right now. I'm not kidding. Like, we need to focus more in our season right now, me and Ben specifically. We're trying so hard to give more attention to our girls than to that tries to pull us away constantly.
You're like so focused on how phones are an element of distraction, and you're very committed to, you've had all kinds of, you've like really educated yourself and other people in the dangers of social media at a young age. And it sounds like sucking back our focus has been a huge source of, I guess, like inspiration.
Yeah, cell phones and social media, and
they're great tools if they keep
amazing.
If we keep them as
we have a career because we were discovered on social media. Mm-hmm. So, like, we totally get the irony that we are
pushing back,
and yet and we're using our influence through our social media and our phones to push back. So it's incredibly ironic, and but we think it's really important. That is where our focus is, like in this season of life, as far as like what we were doing to give back. It's that, and then also trying to raise amazing young women.
I love the themes though of like disconnection, loneliness. It's such a beautiful encouragement to people that there are small things that we can do to bloom where we're planted, to feel more at home in our own lives and in our own like bodies. If I want to walk and I look at my phone, I could be genuinely in the middle of the road for 5 minutes and not realize, because we just become so alien to ourselves. I really like the idea. I read an article yesterday that was just called "Can we have our attention, please?" And it's
such a strong.
Really, I feel like my attention span and my recall is just not what it was 10 years ago. And I've had 2 kids in those 10 years, so that's probably a lot of the reason why, but phones don't help.
No. And it's talk about blooming where you're planted, and and you can look at that from like the big picture of we live in Laurel and we're in this season of life, but also like in the moment, I love to talk to people in the subway in New York, and it's very jarring to them. And
Sorry, I just feel like I love to talk at the people of New York.
Yes.
And I get very uncomfortable.
We have not been on the subway as much as we used to. And 30% of those people ignored me. I mean, like as if I was not even there, much less speaking to them. But 70% of them were really excited to talk and tell me what they were doing and what they were working on. And one of them was this young man who was from a small town in Tennessee, and he heard me talking to someone else. And he recognized that we were Southern, and he was so excited because he was really lonely. He was in New York. He was going to school.
Juilliard.
He was going to Juilliard. He's very accomplished. I have no idea what his name is, but we had this like special moment, and we.
He's like, it's so good to hear someone that sounds like home.
Yeah, and so that's that's our soapbox.
And that's why you should talk to strangers.
And that's why you should always talk to strangers.
And if they open their van door, get right in. You get right in there.
Get that candy.
Yeah.
Get that free candy.
Free candy for everybody.
I do really love that you're so open to surprising connections and also just the open-endedness of a life without plans right now. Just to try to do the very best with the most that you have in the moment that you're in. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to.
I mean, that's not to say that we don't
have wishes.
Yeah.
Some wishes.
But what we're working on, we're not having to think about like, hey, when this is over, what if we try for this? Yeah. We can focus on, okay, these are the things that we have committed to. Let's do the very best at these. And if that opens the door to something else, great. And if it doesn't,
that's where we are.
Yeah.
Do the best you can. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Hey, one of my deep, overwhelming loves is World's Largest Things.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah.
If I were to come to Mississippi, is there anything extremely large I could see?
The largest glass bottle soda collection in Mississippi is in my general store.
And by the way, we're not sure if it's the biggest, but we think it probably is.
We think we're probably selling more than anyone. We definitely have the largest selection. So that's
yes.
We are also, Erin and I are big fans of Fake It Till You Make It.
Yes.
And so
we're going to be, if we're not the biggest,
the world's largest
glass bottle soda.
When I was president of Laurel Main Street, the lawyer for the group, he was on the board, but he was an attorney, and that we added him because we needed an attorney. And then we were trying to come up with a slogan, and he was like, he said, why don't we just call it Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi, Mississippi's downtown? And I said, or can we be? Does that? And he was like, who's going to stop us? And I said, oh. And to hear a lawyer say that, you're like,
who's going to stop us?
Who's going to stop us? So
that's amazing. My dears, I love that you are so open to fun and surprising connections, so intensely obsessed with your hometown, so loving to the people that you meet and to the faces right in front of you. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I insist we do it again.
Yes.
We should. Yeah.
I need to say hello to Sarah Hickner and Katie Blackledge, my two friends who love you so much.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they're going to be excited when they hear that.
Well, I'm going to say hello to John Shire. Tell him that I still have 4 years of eligibility.
You need him.
If you need a good, strong forward.
And a man who can fight on command.
And I can fight. If he told me
Put ankle braces on both ankles.
Both ankles.
He can do it.
If you have well-supported ankles,
yes.
You are ready to get in there.